Good morning, everyone. My name is Gracia Mitchell. I'm here with Mitchell Classical Design. I just wanted to say thank you for being here. It's a pleasure. I'm a graduate of the University of Notre Dame School of Architecture, and I'm from El Salvador, but I live in Washington, D.C. So we founded Mitchell Classical Design as a firm that does traditional classical church architecture. Before founding Mitchell Classical, I worked at Frank and Lawson Architects, also in Washington, D.C., and also dedicated to beautiful traditional church architecture for the past 9 years. So I will be talking about one of the big projects that we had at Frank and Lawson, which is the Blessed Stanley Rother Shrine. It's a shrine that was dedicated earlier this year in 2023, in February, and it looks like it's been there forever, which is that was part of the intent. You know, it's a beautiful church, South Oklahoma City, where different cultures do come together. In this case, the American culture and the Hispanic culture of Oklahoma. And the project arose from the needs of the fast-growing Hispanic communities in Oklahoma City. Several of the churches that are predominantly Hispanic had very serious problems of overcrowding. In the case of Sacred Heart, the first image on the left, they were having 9 masses every weekend, and it was still not enough for the parishioners. There would be people standing outside the doors at every mass. They were worshiping also in the school gym for the past 15 years. So they didn't even have, they would have to bring out folding chairs every weekend and put them back in for school after church. So this was a problem that was throughout many of the churches in Oklahoma. And at the same time, there was a need to have a shrine or a church dedicated to Blessed Stanley Rother. He was a priest from Oklahoma who was murdered in Guatemala in the 1980s during their war conflict. He was a missionary priest to a native community called the Zutu Hill, a very different culture, not even Hispanic, but native in Guatemala. And he did so much for them. They would call him Padre Aplas in their native language. So he was here for 13 years, but as the civil war in Guatemala continued, his name was put on a death list, and he wrote a letter during the last few months where he said, the shepherd cannot run at the first sign of danger. And that's really how he lived his last few months, refusing to abandon his community. He was killed by 3 assassins who came into the rectory. So almost 40 years later, he was beatified in Oklahoma City in 2017. So he is now currently on the path to sainthood. So how do you combine these two needs? The need to honor Blessed Stanley Rother and to have a place for the Hispanic community to meet. The site was a former golf course in South Oklahoma City, and it had to have a pilgrim center museum that would show the story of Blessed Stanley Rother. It also has a 2,000-seat church, which is now the largest church in Oklahoma City. And in the back of the church, if I can point correctly from here, is a chapel where his remains were to be moved. They were moved from a cemetery into the chapel. It also has a future event hall that will be part of, hopefully, the next phase. And here on the other side of the site, there is a very large Tepeyac Hill, which is a representation of the hill where Our Lady of Guadalupe appeared to San Juan Diego. As you all know, Our Lady of Guadalupe is huge within the Hispanic community, and it's already a really beautiful place of devotion where hundreds of people come every day to see Our Lady. So as part of the design, our client requested that the shrine should be in Spanish mission style, both to reflect the mission of Blessed Stanley in Guatemala and the community that it would serve here in the States. So we studied many of the most important churches throughout Latin America, and this would include the cathedral in Mexico City, the Cathedral of San Jose in Guatemala, a much smaller but just as beautiful church in Izalco in El Salvador, and of course, the church where Blessed Stanley served in Santiago Atitlan. So we really studied all these precedents and made sure that the design would be authentic to the style and it would be a beautiful place. So the church had to speak to the community, it had to be beautiful, and it had to accommodate and understand the different traditions of the Hispanic community. We had to understand the processions that people do at Our Lady of Guadalupe, Corpus Christi, the Via Crucis before Easter, there had to be spaces to congregate both inside and outside of the church for the community. And it had to be authentic, so we studied like the different shapes of the Spanish mission style, like the curves, the finials, the arches. It had to have authentic materials. And on the inside as well, it had to be all authentic, the terracotta tiles on the floor and the wood ceilings. The artwork had to flow within the Spanish style. So the Stations of the Cross are replicas of the stations in the Cathedral of Puebla in Mexico. And it also had to have a simple beauty to it, right? It couldn't be too ornate everywhere. It had to have a simplicity that the Spanish mission style has. But where there is a lot of detail, and it's like a detail explosion, is on the focus, the main focal point, which is the sanctuary. So in the main sanctuary, we have, again, different cultures, right? We have Blessed Stanley, an American priest. We have Saint Therese of Lisieux, Saint James the Apostle, promoting the pilgrimages. We have an antique crucifix from the 17th century, which is just, it all comes together in a beautiful Spanish Baroque retablo. And then on the image of the right, here's the chapel, the Blessed Stanley Rother's chapel. So he is buried inside the altar, and they moved his casket and placed him inside the altar. And truly, in my opinion, this is where all the different cultures come together, because you have the American people who come to see Blessed Stanley. You have the Hispanic parishioners from Oklahoma to see Blessed Stanley as well. You have Latino pilgrims from other parts of the United States coming to see. And even, according to the shrine director, there's people who are not even Catholic who come to the shrine. There's Jewish people, Muslim people who have come to see who Blessed Stanley is. Above the altar where his body is, there is a beautiful mural of Blessed Stanley being welcomed into heaven. So he's welcomed by the risen Christ. And on the left, we see some of the church martyrs, again, with the different cultures. We have Blessed Miguel Pro from Mexico, our own St. Oscar Romero from El Salvador. And not only Latino saints, but there's St. Thomas More, there's St. Andrew from Vietnam, St. Charles Luanda from African saints. And on the right side, there are also some of the early church martyrs, like St. Cecilia, St. John the Baptist, among others. So at the church dedication in February, the church was completely full. Again, a complete mixture of people, American people, Latinos, people from Vietnam. There were people from all over the place, and it was a multilingual mass, which was really beautiful. And I like looking at these slides that, we were talking about overcrowding in the smaller church as well. This is a typical Spanish mass on the left. The church is packed. And what we don't see in the slide, but it's really moving and it's very beautiful, is to see how the Hispanic families often have many kids, right? So they bring their babies along, they bring small children, and they're just sitting there. They're enjoying, they're being exposed to the faith. They're growing in this beautiful space, not in the folding chairs of the school gym anymore, but they have a place where they could worship. And the image on the right shows a confirmation mass where hundreds of kids receive their sacrament. And truly, this is a big part of the future of the Catholic Church. And it's beautiful for them to have a space where they can, call home and they can express their different traditions. These are some images of festivals that take place at the shrine. We see some image of the Mexican traditional dancers, native dancers as well. You could hear the rhythm as you look at this, you could hear the rhythm of the processions coming down. And to have a space where you could do this is truly remarkable. This is a mass for the Guatemalan community earlier in the spring, where Father Don Wolf, he's the rector of the shrine, and he's actually related to Blessed Stanley. He's a cousin. So he gave a mass, again, in Spanish and in English, and there's people from Mexico. You see the traditional Mexican dresses and the dancers as well. There's people from not only from Mexico and Central America, but there's people from Peru, Panama, Colombia, Ecuador. So it gives a place even, within the Hispanic community, there's different nationalities. Every country has its different traditions, different outfits and everything. So it's beautiful to have a place where it all comes together. And we talked about the design, but also we believe that the design is only half of it, right? Talking to the shrine director, he says that 70% of the volunteers at the shrine are bilingual, and they have this attitude of service, of welcoming. So it's that attitude of hospitality combined with the beautiful architecture that makes the shrine a true success. You can't just have a beautiful church with people who are not, doing stuff for the shrine, or you could have a very ugly church with really nice people there too. So it's a combination that has to be balanced. And I believe it is achieved at the Stanley Rother Shrine. And I wish I could say many more things I have a lot to say, but I only have 10 minutes. So I would like to close with this image, which I think is the actual human mix of the cultures that we're talking about. We have Blessed Stanley, an American priest in a different land in Guatemala who is completely immersed in a completely different culture. People wearing different outfits, speaking a different language, different foods, yet he is integrated in that community and he came there to serve. He was welcomed into the community to the point where he gave his life for them. And that's something that we try to achieve in a design. It's a concept that we try to achieve in a design, which I think was successfully done. And I truly believe that it'll make a remarkable difference in the future generations of Oklahoma City. So thank you very much.